What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new insane Valorant video where we have a lot to cover. First, we're gonna break down the agent leaks, where we're gonna get a better idea of exactly what this agent has in store for us. Then we're gonna talk about HIKO's take about the EU meta, basically saying that NA is just more advanced than EU. Then a whole bunch of crazy stories about TENS and C9 drama. I mean, there's so much to cover in this video, so make sure you watch to the end, smash that like and subscribe. But go to the Game Leap website right now for in-depth advanced VODs, tips and tricks, weapon guides, and much more. We got it all on the website, so do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But enough wasting time, let's just jump right into it. So first off, we got this banner that is going to show us a silhouette of the agent, which doesn't really give us that much other than the fact that he's most likely a man, and other than that, that's pretty much it. But we did get this footage of leaks from the agent, and I'm going to roll that clip right here.
Kills wins. You know how easy that is gonna be when you have me and Psycho on your team. Holy.
Oh.
wait, what the f do you see this?
Now, if you take this clip of literally footsteps that you can see the footsteps, but you can't see the body, so the person is actually invisible, and you combine it with the samurai shinobi looking thing that is actually in the battle pass, the little banner that we can see that looks like an indicator for the next agent, we can kind of surmise exactly what type of character this is. We already talked about the potential stealth leaks a while back, and that looks exactly what this is. This character looks like they have a way to actually turn invisible except for their steps. Now, that being said, how powerful would an ability to basically mask yourself beside your steps be? Well, you could peek people if you can't fire while you're invisible. As long as you're not showing them your feet, you could peek people and they just can't fight back, which seems pretty broken. I don't even know if you would be able to fight back while you're invis. Now, the second thing that I could think is that you're just truly invisible. You can't fight, but you're invisible, and you could use it to navigate around the map, and then your allies can see your footsteps. That might make sense. Or the enemies can see your footsteps, but it's just harder for them to hit you because you only see those footsteps, so they have to like look down and then look at you, and then you can hide your feet. I'm not entirely sure, but a stealth mechanic seems like one of those mechanics that is just on the cusp of overpowered, right? We see it in Reyna, and it's fine because she's only invisible when she can't fight you, but if a character could be somehow invisible and fire at you, that seems like it would just be super broken. But the last thing that I need to talk about is we gotta think about the characters that we've already had. We've gotten a Sentinel, we've gotten a Duelist, and we've gotten an Initiator, so there's only one character left that we don't have a slot for, and that's Controller. Now, we're in dire need of controllers right now, with Brimstone and specifically Viper not being very good, unfortunately, but we're gonna get to that a little bit more later, and Omen just being dominant. A new controller to mix things up would be fantastic, and an invisible controller, that sounds interesting. Not entirely sure how those things will connect with something like a smoke. If I had to guess, perhaps there's a smoke that instead of actually smoking off an area, it just is like see-through, where neither people on either side can actually see enemies on the other side, and it portrays basically no one on the other side. I know, I'm going really balls deep here. I have no idea, but definitely let me know what you think about that in the comments down below, and tell me what you would like the new agent to have as part of their kit. Now, we mentioned it before that the EU meta was dynamically different than the NA meta, specifically the top 8, where EU played some Viper, some Brim, and a lot of Sage, but relatively less Reyna, Phoenix, and Skye. Now, HIKO has an interesting take on all this, and I'm gonna play the clip here where he talks about the differences between NA and EU.
EU plays agents that I don't think are very good. I don't agree with Brimstone. I think Brimstone is in almost every way is worse than Omen. I don't believe in Sage. I also think Sage, when you run a Sage, you're dropping a Duelist for Sage usually, and I don't think a team with Sage can keep up with double, even triple Duelist. And then a lot of teams are now running Viper, which I think Viper is terrible. I think the implications of running Viper, her ult isn't that good to begin with. The fact that all of her abilities, minus her Molly, that Viper has to stay alive until the end of the round. You get put in these really weird situations where, you know, running Viper Brim, if your Viper dies, you only have 3 Brimsmokes, and on a lot of maps, like Bind, for example, if you Brimsmoke Heaven, your opper can see over it, or he can push through it because it's so small. So I just don't, when I watch EU, I don't get a good grasp of what they think. I just can't understand it. I still think that Omen on every map is pretty much better than Brimstone. You know, Brimstone has a good ultimate, but I still think the ability of Omen to stop an entire rush with a flash, whereas Brimstone can throw a molly down, but especially in NA meta where there's a lot of duelists, you raise Jet, Omen, people can just get through the molly and it's just no problem.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with their main, their staples of their meta, but I'd have to play against a good European team and see how they actually use their abilities. But to me, I just think that NA meta is already more advanced.
Now, HIKO, as one of the dominant players in NA, he had some interesting insight and then also some pretty hot takes. Now, that being said, EU really said that they use Sage to counter these anti-aggression engagements, specifically breach engagements, and the team that won their Sage is like next level insane at stopping these rush plays. And it makes a lot of sense. If you have a Sage, instead of using her abilities early, she sandbags her abilities until that first flash comes out, enemies start rushing on and they want to make a rush play, and she can stop part of those people from rushing on the point. That can be an anti-aggression strategy. And the argument is that up against the double or triple duelist strategies that really want to rush onto point in NA right now, this actually might be really good if people can incorporate this anti-aggression Sage. However, personally, I think that this is going to be far worse up against the winning composition, the 100 Thieves Sentinel composition that they basically run all the time, where they had either Killjoy or Cypher, specifically Steel, play that character. That would just probably win pound for pound strategy-wise and decision-making-wise. But I do think that the Sage is specifically going to be good up against those high, duelist-based compositions, only if the Sage is really, really good and knows how to use their abilities to stop these type of pushes. Now, he also argues that Viper needs to live to get value, which I agree with, and he also argues that Omen is better than Brimstone in almost every situation, which I agree with. But here's the thing, EU didn't really play Brimstone and Viper all that much. I don't know how much HIKO watched of EU. I'm sure he was too busy playing to watch their matches, but honestly, they really played a lot of Sage, and they played a little tiny bit of Viper and a little tiny bit of Brim, probably for specific strats, because a lot of what he says makes sense in that regard. Now, he does end it off with a pretty bold claim. He says that NA is just further advanced than EU, but he wouldn't know for sure until he played a top EU team, so we won't even know who is actually correct until we get some lands, which hopefully we will get some lands before you know it in 2021, if all things go good with everything going on. So I'm really excited, and I really want to see HIKO up against EU. It's going to be a pretty interesting rivalry. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is the weapon pick rate in First Strike. Really quickly, I wanted to hit on three things: the Stinger, the Classic, and the Phantom versus the Vandal. Now, first off, the Stinger saw a giant amount of pick rate in every single First Strike. It was one of the most used weapons in the entire game, and pretty much the Stinger is one of those weapons where teams will force buy so that they can actually challenge ARs, or they will buy when they win that first pistol round because it scales better up against ARs in the bonus round. Stinger is something that you really need to get familiar with, and personally, I kind of think it's a little overpowered for only 1,000 credits, and I wouldn't mind seeing that bumped up a little bit monetary-wise, but definitely let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Now, the next up is the Classic pistol, which Classic with armor is seeing a lot more play than it used to. It used to be a lot more ghosts, but even characters that you would think would normally use ghosts are now opting for that Classic pistol plus armor because it's 100 less credits, and honestly, you are just as lethal, if not more so, and your time to kill is the same because you could still take a headshot. So you hit 2 headshots into the enemy, they hit 2 headshots into you, or headshot and body shot, they can't buy armor. So the time to kill is identical, but the Classic pistol allows you to get those insane right clicks that can one-shot enemies for one, and for two, can be used really easily while you're moving, and you get an extra 100 credits. So it's just a smattering of a lot of different things, and a lot of top pros have been clamoring for Classic pistol nerfs, and based on some of the things that I've seen Classic pistols pull off, the fact that it can one-shot 150 HP people out of nowhere, that might be a little bit too powerful for a pistol you don't have to spend any money for. But as usual, let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about with pick rate is the Phantom versus the Vandal. It's still heavily leaning towards the Phantom, but the Vandal is still seeing some play, not a tiny insignificant amount of play like it used to before its buffs, and there are still some outliers, some top pros that still use the Vandal. Now, the question is, does the Vandal need to be 50 50-50 viable, I'm not so sure. The problem often comes up where if you're playing in a coordinated setting, the Phantom's almost always gonna be better, and if you power up the Vandal to the point where it is better in a coordinated setting than the Phantom, or equal to, it will be completely overpowered in a ranked setting. So I think that the balance that they have right now is fine, and I would prefer that they don't change it at all, but like usual, that's just my personal opinion. Now moving on to C9 drama, and everyone has been talking about C9 ever since they didn't make it to First Strike. Tens has been putting depressed Twitter posts on Twitter, and everyone's like, what the freak? And everyone's blaming Shinobi, getting mad. Their freaking head coach got replaced. I mean, there's so much drama involving this team right now, and I'm gonna say right off the bat that a lot of this stuff is allegedly. I'm not gonna say it definitively, but this is what other people on the team have said in interviews. But the thing is, Shinobi is obviously just underperforming. But that being said, he is IGL, and it is really hard to perform and be IGL at the same time sometimes, especially if your team is not performing on all axes, which there could be many weaknesses in the C9 roster. Now that being said, we got some insight into what is exactly happening to C9 behind the scenes, and there was a moment where Shinobi planned out an entire strategy based on Tens playing Jet, you know, with rollouts and ability use, and Tens didn't say anything. Last 5 seconds before the round started, he locked Reyna in a pro match. Now, not only does this just throw all the strategies that your in-game leader had out the window, but it shows just a blatant lack of respect Tens has for Shinobi. Now, this is kind of giving a lot of flashbacks to things that happened to Tens back in CSGO. He said this in an interview with Dextero a long time ago about why he got benched in CSGO. He said this: I was benched because I was the only person arguing with people. I felt like our style wasn't good, and I didn't believe in the system. Now, back then, Tens was kind of a nobody. He was a new person into the CSGO scene, and once he started causing any problems, they just dropped him just like that. But that's not the case anymore. Tens is the literal best player right now. I mean, based on his stats alone, he is having the most amount of solo impact, and it's absolutely crazy, and it's not even close. People can't argue it now. Does that make him the best player in the world? Maybe that's your opinion, but it's undoubtable how much impact this guy has. Now, if he's hard carrying game after game after game, and it gets so bad, and y'all lose so much to the point where he doesn't make the First Strike tournament, and he loses respect for the in-game leader and doesn't even listen to the calls that are being made, then, you know, Tens is not going to be the one cut in this situation, regardless of whether or not you think that's a little immature or you agree or disagree with Tens. Basically, Tens is put in a situation where everything is pretty much dictated around him. If he doesn't respect you on the team, you are not going to be on the team. If you are consistently not performing in Tens' eyes, then you just have no place on C9. And this is pretty brutal to say, but it's clear that not only is Tens performing very high, but he's marketable for C9, and he's a fan favorite as well. Now, I do kind of feel bad for Shinobi, who is most likely trying his best, trying to scrap together a team to do really well and being an in-game leader when it's obvious that there's many problems, not just him. But like I said, it's going to be pretty brutal here, and it's very, very likely that Shinobi gets cut, and it's also very likely that more than just Shinobi gets cut. And we see a situation very similar to what happened to 100 Thieves, where a lot of pieces of the team fall apart, and they get rebuilt around one person, aka Tens, just like 100 Thieves was built around HIKO. But let me know what you think about the entire situation. Do you agree with how Tens does things? Do you think that he's right, wrong? Definitely let me know what you think about this entire thing in the comments down below. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about is the fact that G2, the literal dominant team in the entire Europe region for the entire time that Valorant has been a thing in EU since the release of Valorant, they lost one tournament. They didn't win the First Strike tournament. Now, they still placed in the top 8, so they still did good, but they didn't win, and because of that, G2 Esports is gonna bench Pith and David P. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know that much about the EU scene in the first place, but I do know that these two are essential players on one of the, if not the most dominant roster in all of EU, and it just seems really, really bizarre to not do well in one single tournament and just drop 2 players. I have no idea why this decision is made. I don't know if these players want to move to a different roster, or maybe some management is making some weird decisions. I have no idea, but it's absolutely crazy that this is happening. But as usual, definitely let me know what you think about that in the comments down below, and go to the Game Leap website right now for in-depth tips, tricks, and advanced guides. We got everything we need on the Game Leap website to climb just like that. But that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.